Welcome to the mayhem. Dick and Loy mayhem. Media mayhem. Marketing a mayhem. You might love it, you might hate it. It's my favorite freaking show.
If I say the word Kelly's, then you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Everybody does. If they don't, then they might as well skip town. The ghosts of wagon trains file by. The ghosts of 21-year-olds taking their first drink echo in the rooms. So many stories to be told, and what it's like to run a family business like that for so many years. We go to the source, Kyle Kelly, for a lively cigar-smoking chat on the upper deck at Kelly's. Plus, you might even find out about that soldier in the upper window. Let's go. Hey, Lloyd, once again, we find ourselves in your old stomping ground, Westport, here today.
Oh, yeah. It's all happening in Westport.
It's all happening. You'll hear helicopters flying over and
a
few police sirens, maybe every now and then. But
that will happen. You know where we are? We are at one of my favorite places. We're at the rooftop of Kelly's.
Wow.
Which is, for the past decade or so, been a pretty cool place to go up and have a cigar.
Well, it sure is. It sure is.
You gonna have one?
I'm gonna get this one going. What do I need to do with this slicer thing?
Well, you know who I got somebody here who will help you.
Who's that? Okay.
Kyle Kelly.
The Kyle Kelly?
That's right, of Kelly's.
He's gonna cut my cigar?
That's right.
All right. What did you do to my cigar, Kyle? What did you cut?
I gave you a little V cut there, Dick. It's kind of a high-end cut for some people.
Oh, well, look at that.
Kyle Kelly's. A lot of stuff happening here. I love it. How does the rooftop deck do? This is a 365-day-a-year deck, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The bar isn't open every night, but it is every weekend and some weeknights. But we have table service. We call it dial a drink. You just call downstairs and order your drink, and a wait staff will bring it up for you.
Is that right?
That's cool, yeah. How long have you been doing this now?
48 years.
48 years.
Yeah.
That's something?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Let's go back to the start here. That 48 years ago, what was the deal? What was going on?
Early 70s in Westport, I started checking IDs. Westport Square had not been developed. It was still kind of a sleepy neighborhood place, but it was showing a lot of potential.
Sure.
River Key was going on then, right?
It was just about ready for its demise.
Yeah,
it was 73, 74. Yeah. I was 18 when I started here, so I wasn't hitting bars in Kansas City.
That's right.
Which, you might imagine, being in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
My dad frowned on that, which I certainly understand.
Well, heck, we ought to go back there first. Talk about Randall.
Yeah.
When did it start?
Oh, Dad started here 72 years ago this month.
Wow.
Holy cow.
In 1947. My sister, my oldest sibling, had just been born the previous month, and Dad went looking for a job. He and my mom had just moved back to Kansas City from San Francisco to deliver my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dad came in here and started working at the Westport Inn as a bartender.
Okay.
The three owners of the Westport Inn were Gint, Zahner, and Brock. They were three retired Kansas City, Missouri police captains.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure those lads had a few tales to tell.
Oh yeah, I'll bet so.
Yeah.
Wow. Were there any other businesses down here at that time that are still around?
No. I mean, Brown's Deli at 31st in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
It's been in business 60 years longer than us.
Yeah, it's over 100 years. It's the oldest business, Irish business in America, I think.
North America.
North America?
North America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they were in business, but there was...
So your dad started it back then, and...
He bought into it that October.
Bought into it, okay.
Yeah. He and Art bought out two of the other owners, and then Art Brock. Then Art Brock died in February of 77. And we officially became Kelly's Westport Inn that June.
77?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And you were there in the beginning, and your brothers, and
yeah.
There were what, three of you working?
Yeah,
then?
three. My brother Randy.
Pat, Randy, and you.
Yeah, And Randy started here in '66, and then Pat in '69, and Randy actually left in '77, moved to the Ozarks and bought a marina, and he's been down there since. But he ran the place for about 10 years.
And, Pat and you, and now the tradition is you pass the baton on, right?
Yeah, third generation. Two of my kids, Mitch and Colleen, they're 36 and 33. They're running the place.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now let's go back and let's hear the Kyle stories.
How wide of an audience do you have?
We were wide open, so you can do whatever you want.
Well, I tell this to people, peers that would appreciate being an 18 or 19-year-old checking IDs in a place. And it was a Friday afternoon. It was in the summer, probably 6 or 7 o'clock, early evening. And a very attractive lady started to walk out, and she had a drink in her purse. And she had a purse that was one of those fishnet purses.
Yeah.
So you could see what was in it. Really nice looking 30-year-old. I'm 18, very green. I said, "Excuse me, you can't take the drink out." And she goes, "What drink?" And I said, "The one in your purse." And she goes, "There's no drink in my purse." And I said, "Then if I shake your purse, I won't spill anything." And she goes, and she just kind of glared at me. She goes, "No, I shook it." She walked out. She was very indignant. She walked out. She came back in about 2 minutes later and threw her bra at me. And she goes, "I had to use that to wipe out my purse." And I thought, I'm going to love this job.
These are my kind of people.
Yes.
I love it. That made an indelible
It absolutely
image.
did.
Wow.
Yeah, 50 years later, it's still.
And women are still throwing undergarments at you constantly.
Not like they used to. Lloyd.
Oh, is that right?
No, not like they
Okay.
used to. Yeah.
Yeah, probably peaked at 18 on that
I
one.
really should have saved that.
Should have hung it up somewhere in the bar. Yeah.
Yeah, put a little plaque by it.
You know, I remember being down here on the day we had Mike Murphy's last radio show. You remember that? That was a big crowd, good fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
We had the Irish band down here playing,
Yeah.
and
All the mayors,
all the mayors, yes.
current and all the past mayors were here.
Yeah.
Yep. That was quite a day.
It
Sure
was. Yeah, the elders played.
And I see you've got a painting of Mike down at the bottom of the stairway. So
Yep.
he's still here.
Yeah, he is. That was done by Bob Carson, who was a very, very interesting character. He was a semi-pro boxer for a while.
God, I love
and
Bob
kind of got
Carson.
into,
Yeah.
and he kind of got into doing a lot of boxing photography work and also his sketching. And there's a lot of his sketches here, and I still have a handful of them at home too.
I've got some big Bob Carson stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
there's
was
a couple on
character,
the
man.
stairway coming up here.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
The one that's one of my favorites is Waiting for Kelly's to Open, and the characters that he captured in that picture. We'll check it on the way down.
Now, everybody listening to this, probably 90% of you have been to Kelly's, but Bob Carson is the guy that did a lot of these. They're kind of caricature sketches, but they're a little more detailed, and they really are very nice, kind of pastels, right?
Yeah.
Charcoals,
Chalk.
chalk. They're great. And Bob was I assume Bob is not with us.
Yeah, he died quite a while ago.
That's what I thought. Well, Bob, I used to live catter corner from Kelly's on the second floor of the building that now houses the
Beer kitchen.
And some people told me that Bob lived up there for a while. Did you ever hear the story?
I think Bob actually lived down there. He could have lived there because that was kind of a flop house.
It was a flop house, yeah.
And also down above, I think, Gene Dickinson's place.
Right.
Yeah.
I lived in both of those flop houses, but but Bob apparently was on the third floor and jumped or fell out the window and landed on the awning that bounced him up and down onto the street, onto the sidewalk,
Yeah.
without serious injury. But the third floor of that building has got to be, 40 feet up in the air?
It's tall.
That's dead.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, if you drink enough, you can take on some certain superhuman characteristics, I guess is the moral.
Maybe.
Maybe that's
I'm not
the
going to try
moral.
it.
Wow.
I don't know. Probably find a few morals in that one.
Yeah.
But Bob was really something, man. One of those
Yeah.
great Westport characters. Think about how many of those we went through in our time. I mean, I wasn't down here quite as long as you, but I was down here for a while at that same time. And man, where all those characters. I wonder what happened to Curtis.
Curtis moved to St. Paul, Minnesota to take care of his mother.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now tell me about Curtis.
Curtis was the shoe shine guy.
Had the one arm?
Yes.
Okay, I know
He was
Curtis.
injured in a
Sure.
fire.
Yeah.
Had some bad scars.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of on the street.
He was constant,
People would-
constant presence
Yeah.
down here.
People would pull up in cars and hand him, dinners, that had been carried out, things like that. What a
Yeah.
great guy, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and just so many of them. But tell us about some of the people that you remember coming into Kelly's over the years that you kind of got a charge out of.
Boy, that's tough to start a list, but there's one old gentleman named Frank Romano. And Frank was in his late 70s, early 80s when I used to see him in there pretty regularly back in the 70s. I think Frank was one of those guys that maybe didn't have a social security number, and who knows if his last name was really Romano. But he was always dressed to the nines, very dapper, sport coat and tie all the time. And of course he loved Joe Latona, our day bartender at the time. He and Joe hit it off great. And just guys like that
Just
stand
men of
out.
mystery, huh?
Yeah, and I'd see him 10 or 15 hours a week, being up here in the daytime.
So many different crowds, and you used to get the Manor bakery shift in here at 5 o'clock in the morning. Weren't you always one of the early opening bars?
Yeah, we opened at 6 for years. 6 a.m., 7 days a week. 6 days a week back then.
And that
Yeah.
big shift of Manor Bakery people people probably don't know they call this Manor Square because it was the actual bakery.
Yeah, they get off the midnight shift, or what was really their busiest shift probably, to get bread out on the street at 4 or 5 in the morning to get it to the stores. Yeah, and those guys would come in, and then you'd get some people from Hospital Hill. Some of our Kansas City's finest after an all-night shift would come in. And
I remember I came down when our radio stations were in Manor Square. I got off the air at 9 o'clock one morning and came in, and there was quite a few people here.
Yeah.
And had the earliest beer I'd ever had in my life at 9 a.m. And it kind of put little pins and needles in my stomach. So
Did it?
Maybe I'm not a morning drinker.
Well, it's never too late, Dick.
That's right. Never too late to learn.
you mean never too early?
That's
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. How about celebrities that came in? Any names you can drop?
A lot of Royals used to come in here. Brett wasn't exactly a regular, but he made a number of appearances.
Yeah.
Chiefs players used to come in the 70s into the 80s. And then I don't know, maybe back then Schottenheimer maybe told him to stay out of Westport because there was a few problems with, ancillary issues.
I mean, those guys were all good athletes, but let's talk about great athletes. Let's talk about the wrestlers and stuff that came in.
Met Handsome Harley Race in here.
Yes.
Handsome
I
Harley.
met
I saw
Andre
Handsome in here.
Andre the Giant.
Is that right?
Yeah. You remember Nick Pino?
Sure.
7'2" Nick Pino.
Absolutely.
First 7-foot center in the Big 8 bet.
He used to be
K-State.
out and about. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Nick was shadowed by Andre. Nick could stand behind Andre and you could not see him at all.
I'll be darned.
He was so big.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had some buddies that threw a Nick Pino Open. They had a basketball tournament that they did every year.
He's down in Santa Fe
Really?
for Albuquerque. Down in New Mexico, does insurance.
Wow, glad to hear he's still around.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. And so the old all-star wrestlers, I know they were down here a lot in Westport.
I met Harley years after he was wrestling, and he took his index finger and middle finger and separated them. He said, try to squeeze those together. And I put my hand around it, and I could not squeeze those fingers together.
Really?
He
Wow.
had freakish strength. And then he got started on a steroids deal. And all
Really?
the guys were cheating, and you don't need to do that stuff. And he was pretty outspoken about it.
Wow, that's wild. And
Yeah.
then what other local celebs? Dick Wilson ever come in here?
Just at 9 in the morning.
Sitting at 9 o'clock.
We
time
had
one
a stool saved for him every Wednesday morning.
Dick, you emceed the tournament or something.
Yeah, golf
the
tournament.
Kelly's turn. Tell
I
us
did,
about
yes.
that.
Oh, yeah.
The shillelagh.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What's the shillelagh? Tell everybody about the shillelagh.
It's our golf tournament that Larry Chugger Worth and I started 41 years ago. Larry, I really call him Chugger, was our day bartender at the time, and he just said one day, he goes, let's do a bar golf tournament. And we thought, sounds like a good reason. Get out on the golf course and drink beer. And 1978, the first year of it, we ended up with $30 left over, and we said, what are we going to do with this? And we said, well, we'll save it for postage for next year.
There you go, yeah.
And then the next year we had $150 left over, and we said, let's find a charity. So the first few years, we gave our proceeds to Sherwood Center, and that's a school for autistic children. And then in about 1981 or 82, Mike Leahy, who was a former employee here and one of my brother Randy's best friends growing up, went through treatment and ended up at the Welcome House. They took Mike in and got Mike cleaned up, and my dad said, let's start doing stuff for the Welcome House. So our tournament for about 35 years or so was a fundraiser for the Welcome House, and it was a two-way street, because the Welcome House guys helped us a lot. They helped us with the organization of it. They helped hustle prizes to use for auction items, etc. And then they bring the guys out during the tournament. They'd cook lunch. They'd help with the beverage distribution out on the course, and they clean up the course. I mean, we'd always get compliments from whichever golf course we were at, how nice it was that we left the course in almost better shape than when we got there.
Sure, yeah.
And it was the Welcome House guys that really held that up. And then just a couple years ago, we've transitioned back to learning disabilities, special ed kids, basically on the autism spectrum. That we do fundraiser for the Aiden Project, and that's a 501c3. My son Mitch and his wife Sarah started. Their son Aiden, who is 6 now, was diagnosed. He was on the spectrum at about 18 months, and they had a hell of a time finding the right place to get him diagnosed, and then treatment. In Kansas City, Missouri, that's just stuff, it falls through the cracks. And they were able to find the treatment for him in Aiden's mainstream school now. He's in first grade at Curia Bars, and he's doing great. And
wonderful.
Good.
Yeah. So they wanted to do something for
So
people
a
to
big
get
part
put
of
in their
that is
situation.
catching that early.
Absolutely.
And then they can get people down the right path.
Yeah, because it's about training the parents too. You know, getting the kids in routines and not exciting them.
And what is the place called? The charity?
It's the Aiden Project.
The Aiden Project.
AIDAN Project.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where is the tournament this year? Do you know yet?
Yeah, it's at Swope.
Oh, that's a great course.
Yeah, we've been there about 10 years now.
Loy and I played at Swope here this past year, and were not asked to leave the course, so we took that as a personal victory during the game. So yes.
Yeah, obviously they fixed it up very nicely, but not quite nicely enough, because
That's right.
Dick and I finished around there.
Yeah, as Groucho Marx said,
Yeah,
I'd never join a club that would have me
That's true.
accept me as a member.
Tell me about in your 48 years or so, how's the bar business changed?
It's very complicated now, and it's not just a slam on government regulations, although that's part of it, but liability is much more complex. Marketing, you know, if you're not social media savvy, you know, you're lost.
Yeah.
So my brother Pat and I, we used to do it all, hands-on, you know, radio advertising, whatever the option was at the time. We understood, at least sort of. And now it's just it's certainly beyond my scope. So that's made it much more complicated. Hiring, you know, it's kind of interesting with the good economy. You'd think hiring would be good, but people have other options, and so they tend to bounce from job to job a little more frequently.
Yeah,
that's been a difficult situation for a lot of businesses, but especially, I think, food
Service
and beverage.
industry, yeah.
I mean, your marketing is helped by the fact that you're an institution in the oldest building in Kansas City, and everybody who has ever been alive in this city has been to Kelly's at least once. So there's a little bit of word of mouth going on out there, but
we got some momentum.
You got some momentum going, but still, that is a terribly hard thing to be on top of. So do you do any of that, or do you just let the chips fall where they may?
The kids do it.
Your kids do it?
Yeah, Colleen does our pretty much all our advertising, but she admits she runs a lot of ideas by him and also by Nick Van Zandt, one of our managers.
So you can find out a lot about Kelly's on social media for those people who are still contemplating or waiting until their first
legal drink.
Because this is where you have to have it, right?
A lot of people have.
Good place to do that.
Yes, it is.
What's the deal with Westport now? You know, it's in the news all the time about what they're trying to do at night. They're closing down streets or opening up streets or whatever. Where are things now with all that?
Well, first of all, there's probably a lot of misconceptions about this being a big change this last year. Street closures have occurred since the early 90s, and it was really encouraged by the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department that we block off vehicular traffic, because there was no way for the department to have enough staff to help us keep the traffic moving.
Sure.
So the streets turned into parking lots.
Right, yeah.
So we've been blocking streets off almost every year since about '92. With the proliferation of guns due to some law changes in Jeff City in the last couple of years, we saw gun incidents go up, large percentage increases, especially 2016, 2017.
Okay.
And that pushed us to look for alternative solutions for how to get the violence off the streets. And I want to kind of reiterate that this stuff primarily happens out on the streets. It's not happening in the clubs, which obviously there's solutions to that. You know, everybody can do their own weapons restrictions on private property, but you can't do it on public property. So after about 14 months of talking to city staff, legal department, et cetera, we came up with an idea with Catherine Shields' help to vacate the sidewalks at Westport. So then on a weekend night, when our customers show up at 11 o'clock, they walk down a sidewalk, it's private property, then you have a right to restrict weapons.
Okay.
So all the entrances are on sidewalks, and that's allowed us to get basically weapons off the streets of Westport on weekend nights after 11 o'clock, basically April through August, or I'm sorry, October.
Well, let's take a moment here, and I'll throw some historic music in and talk about the history of this place. Wagon trains came out of Independence, Missouri, and headed towards the southwest, stopping in Westport at the store to pick up the stuff they needed to get on out there, and Kelly's building was a part of that, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And wasn't there a Boone that was involved in something here at one point? One of the Boone family members?
Albert Boone,
Yeah?
Daniel's grandson,
Okay.
owned the property in the 1850s, only for about 3 or 4 years, because Boone was a slave trader, and he was frowned upon in this part of the country at that time. So he sold shortly after purchasing the place. Yeah.
Back in the mid-'80s, I did a video with KSHB, and we went down into the basement here and shot some video of supposedly the shackles on the walls where the slaves were kept and those kind of things. So I don't know if we found anything or not, but
You didn't.
I didn't. Okay,
You didn't.
I didn't remember.
But
And I've had people.
He found Al Capone's bottle down there.
Yeah.
I've had people get in my face pretty hard about they've seen the shackles, and I believe me, I've never seen shackles, because the part of the building where there could have been shackles is all dirt.
It is. I remember that.
The
Yeah,
cave.
it's a crawl space. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crawl space. Just about. It's got a little ceiling height to it. It's about 5.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the other part of the building was built in about 1890. The flat level, which is what we're over now.
Yeah.
The one-story structure, and that's got cement walls or limestone walls, etc. But
Well,
they say, oh yeah, there's shackles down there.
Well, tell us about the
Bullshit.
soldier in
We'll
the
put
window.
those rumors to rest now. Yes.
Thank you. Finally.
Yes.
The soldier up in the window.
Okay, there was 2 soldiers from the Westport Parade that used to take place in the 1950s into the early 60s. And the Westport Inn float, the precursor to Kelly's, they had a float, and it was an outline of the building on the sides. It was painted, and they used to store it down the basement. And then there was 2 soldiers, a Confederate and a Union soldier, that stood guard in the building, or I'm sorry, on the float. And then my dad and his cronies sat at a table and had a few beers and probably played cards or whatever for the parade.
Okay. All
And I
right.
remember walking behind it, and I don't know how old I was, 5 years old, and H. Roe Bartle gave me a quarter. He was the mayor at the
really?
time. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
That's great. You started off getting a quarter from the mayor, and now you just send City Hall money every year. They got a good
Like
return on
clockwork.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. We're glad to send.
So
we're glad to send our taxes.
So the statue of the soldier that was peeking out the window, that always was just so spooky looking.
In. Yeah. It's old paper mache, and it's
loved it.
lasted that long.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's still there, right?
You know, I'm not sure.
We better go out and
I
look.
tell you what happened was there was a big thing when
left.
the Confederate flag, all the issues with the sensitivity of it, that there was a lot of stuff that started being said about
Yeah.
the Confederate soldier in our building, and you know how it went crazy on social media.
Sure.
So we put a tablecloth over the Confederate soldier. We left the Union soldier present, and I don't think we got rid of him, but we moved him out of the window.
Yeah. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Good.
Social unrest.
I'll tell you
That's
what.
right.
The evolution of running a bar.
Isn't that the truth?
So St. Patrick's Day has been kind of a big day around here for a while. Everybody's seen the iconic postcard
Yeah.
with
Well, my dad
nothing but people around Kelly's.
closed the business down on Patty's Day after 1965.
I remember
It was
that.
too crazy. They were busting kids in from Lawrence, and
Yeah.
you know, this was when Westport had 3 bars. You know, Dave's 423 Club, Meyerhoff's, and Kelly's.
That was Dave Golad's.
Go Lads, who he
that
moved across
became
Broadway.
Dave Stagecoach.
Dave Stagecoach.
And then Meyerhoff's, which later moved up Broadway.
Yeah, in the Redhead, which ultimately became the
Elephant
Hurricane.
Johnny's, and then the Hurricane, right?
Was it Elephant Johnny's?
Yeah, do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Yeah, that's what it was right after the Redhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That was probably one of Kansas City's first gay bars.
yeah.
You know, I don't know what other bar it would have been. So
Well,
Dad,
I don't know.
Dad
They-
shut the place down in '65. He said it's too crazy. And then in '82, you know, Pat and I were running the place. My brother Randy had left, and we told Dad, we said, you know, we want to try opening. And he said, you know, go for it, lads. You got the nerve to do it, give it a shot. And we did that first year. That was the day we hired Red.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Red, who's
still here.
Here.
Yeah.
The great bartender Red.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark
Wow.
Weber had been here 4 years. Did a lot of other guys. Of course, Donegan and Hogan had already left. They'd gone and opened Stroud's in
That's
'77.
right. Yeah.
My brother Randy had left, but we had a good crew then.
That is, now I've been through quite a few of those myself. In fact, I have some injuries to this day from those St. Patrick's Days, internal and
Self-inflicted.
external. Well, you know, yeah. And I just remember it is full tilt boogie.
It's pretty crazy.
Absolute full tilt. Set it up for as much product as you can possibly crank out and go.
Yeah. The first couple years, we way overdid our preparation. We moved every beer bottle out of the refrigerators. We put them in storage and only served cans and draft beer. And we didn't change any other inventory, so to speak, but we just went to so much trouble because we didn't want glass to get out on the street, for one thing. The police department made that very clear. But we went to a whole lot of trouble, and then we finally realized, especially when the Big 12 basketball tournament started really gaining energy in Kansas City, and our business here really started picking up in the mid-'80s. We realized we're doing, a third of this business on a Saturday during the Big 12, so we can handle it on Patty's Day without changing stuff like we used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's hard to say it's become routine because it's not a routine day at all. It's 16 hours of nonstop, 4 deep at the bar, very intense. But
have you noticed that people behave better now or not? Or is it the same? Because my memories of the way the crowd was, of course you had the great George Lukanoff was running liquor control, and he said, boys, just, he'd hear the boundaries and
use good judgment.
Use good judgment, knock yourself out. He was a great guy.
George was a wonderful man.
We had some really big St. Patrick's days, outside and inside in those days.
Right.
But it just seems to me that it was wilder behavior, and maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think it was a little more Wild West. Not what you would call violent, but more risque.
Licentious.
Oh,
yeah.
I have to look that up.
According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, licentious is described as lacking legal or moral restraints, especially disregarding sexual restraints.
It was.
It was fun, though.
It was. Oh gosh, yes, it was fun.
What I love to do on Patty's Day is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, say last call in 12 hours. Our staff hates it because they're thinking, oh my God, I've got 3 more 4-hour shifts to work.
I remember the blisters.
Yeah.
Because you're serving drinks in
Opening so many
wet
bottles.
And then the blisters from the bottle. Yeah. Twisting those bottles.
Yeah, you
crazy
get raw
stuff.
doing that.
Wow. I'm learning things here.
You get blisters from counting
Dick?
20s too.
Do you? Oh,
And they're
man.
much more rougher on your hands than 5s and 1s.
Wow.
And then the tournaments that come to town, still see a lot of big action from those, don't you?
Yeah. We're a big Iowa State destination, and that started in the mid-'80s. 4 Iowans. One was actually a Hawkeye, and then the other 3 are Iowa State. We're sitting in here one night and said, next year, let's send out flyers to tell people to meet at Kelly's on Wednesday night of what was then the Big 8 basketball tournament. And those 4 people started that flyer effort, and on Wednesday night, about 50 people showed up. And then the next year, it turned into about 200 people. And then the next year, it was about maximum, and that spilled out into every other day of that week. And now Big 12 week is the busiest week of the year. This year, the Big 12 tournament ends on Saturday, March 16th, and Patty's Day is Sunday the 17th.
Okay.
So we're gonna carb up that
Wow.
week and get ready for the marathon.
So who knew this was a big Iowa bar?
A lot of Iowans.
Did you notice any difference in your business when the place downtown got up and running, the
Power and Light.
Power and Light place? Mm-hmm.
Big time. We lost in 08 and 09. We were down 45 to 50% those 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. It was, we kind of looked at each other and thought, we'll weather this storm, but it's not going to be fun. And that's when we built the deck. We bought the building from the Weideman family, who'd owned it since 1903. And they sold it to us in 1995. We paid rent for 48 years to them. And we'd gotten the building paid off in about 05 or 06, which was great timing because we couldn't have afforded rent during those 2 years of the fallout from the downtown development. And we thought, what can we do to bounce back? Well, the smoking ban went into effect in June, I think, of 09, and that hurt too. And the economy was on the skids, so it was the perfect storm. It wasn't all downtown related,
Yeah, sure.
but that was a big part of it. And we thought, well, we can't build out on the streets. We're landlocked here, so we built up and we decided to put this deck in. And Pat and I talked about it for almost a year until we finally decided. We pulled the trigger in October of '09, the construction started, and it went like clockwork. It was a great winter for doing construction basically outside, and we opened on March 10th. March 10th. So right before the Big 12 basketball and right before Patty's Day. And
Well, it's a great size space, and I mean it's wonderful to give people an option, a place where you can have a cigar and a drink.
Yeah.
And
in nice, summer evening nights, fall and stuff. It's really pretty up here because these awnings roll back, the roof's exposed. You got the skylight here, so you really feel like you're outside and you're not looking out at a bus. We've had a lot of very good fortune with staffing. We've had some longevity here.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about some of these legendary folks you had.
Yeah,
here.
We had a guy here, Charlie Doherty, who worked here for 46 years.
Charlie Doherty, okay.
Charlie
he
worked
was
here.
wonderful, the perfect little classic Irish bartender.
Wasn't he?
I love his tricks.
Yeah.
Like you'd be in here.
Oh, he was a gamer.
Always playing what was the trick he'd do?
He had the buzzer.
The buzzer.
The hand buzzer.
Oh, my
he did a
gosh.
whoopee cushion. He did all this adolescent stuff, and he was in his 70s. He was just great. He started here in 1946, before my dad got here, and worked here till '92. He died. Worked until he died. Just a great guy.
He was the hand buzzer trick. Anytime a really attractive woman would come in,
Yes.
all you had to do, Dick, was chat her up and say, have you met Charlie? And she'd see this cute little old man behind the bar. Looks like everybody's grandpa, just a sweet man.
Yeah.
And inevitably, they'd say, "Oh, Charlie, oh, it's so nice to meet you." And he'd act like he was getting his stuff together and coming over, and he'd come up and give him the hand buzzer.
Everybody remembered Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
If you met him once.
That's great.
Everybody remembered Charlie.
And then there were other, God, I loved Mikey
Mitchell. Yeah.
The late Mikey Mitchell.
Mikey grew up right catty corner behind my brother and I. Lived at 52nd in Baltimore, and he was a little renegade in 8th grade. We knew he was just perfect for the bar business.
Yeah.
He was a people person.
He was.
Mikey was the
great
ultimate
one.
people person.
He went on and opened a bar, didn't he?
He and Stu Gentry opened the Daily Limit,
That's right.
110th and Holmes, out by Minor Park.
That's right. And who
Yeah.
else? You've had some other great
Oh,
employees.
Donegan and Hogan.
Yes.
They worked here
Big success.
about 5 or 6 years before they opened Stroud's in '77.
They didn't make any money on that one, did they?
Yeah, Mike's
That
still
thing
doing
was
it.
rolling.
Yeah, that's really iconic too.
Yeah. There was nothing
those
like
guys.
that, especially that original location. What a trip that was.
Yeah,
You'd go in there, it'd be so crowded at Stroud's, you'd be hungry, but you'd be drinking these, it was so crowded and frantic around the bar as you're waiting for your table that you just say, get just long neck beers, because you didn't want them to take any time and make any.
Yeah.
So you're drinking these frosty cold long neck beers on an empty stomach, and you'd always have to wait longer than you'd hoped at place because it was jammed. Have about 3 of those right on the old empty stomach, and then all of a sudden these heaps of fried chicken and hot gravy and potatoes and cinnamon rolls and all this stuff. I mean, I can remember feeling terrible leaving that place.
yeah. It was heaven though.
It was. It was
Yeah.
great.
Mark Weber just retired about a year ago after 42 years.
Oh, did he?
He fills in. He'll work on Patty's Day, come in and work about a 6-hour shift, and he helps us out in other times when we get in a pinch. If we have an employee meeting or something, Mark will cover for us. And Mark's another brother,
Yeah.
Worked around him for so long, and he was our manager here for 30 plus years. And of course, Red.
Yes, the great Red.
Yep.
And Red is still here.
Red's still here. And Pat Catino worked here for 17 years.
Yeah, sure.
And Chris Manessis, Jimmy Yosel, a bunch of characters. A lot of fun.
Wow.
Let's talk about some of the other characters that were down here in Westport that were in the business. my gosh, we had so many political issues and things down here for so many years. The addition of Manor Square, and with every period of change, it seems like there was a new level of chaos down here.
Yeah, it opened a Pandora's box. It did. Every change did.
Yeah, and a lot of great people, a lot of big characters, but just it's like herding cats.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
well, those changes, when they were brought about because of the nature of Westport's ownership makeup, it was much more challenging because you didn't have one landlord to deal with City Hall, say.
Right.
So you've got 18 business owners and 15 landlords that are trying to come to some consensus and have a common voice to go talk to City Hall to ask for assistance. And you didn't always get a common voice. And so that was our challenge, And it isn't so much today because about 12 or 13 years ago, we created our first CID here, Community Improvement District. And the Community Improvement District basically, in 1 year, took us from having a $500,000 a year annual budget for security to $1 million that was collected through tax revenue, property tax, I should say, an assessment. The $500,000 a year was a crapshoot. It was all voluntary. The bars would pay it, restaurants, some of them would pay it. Retailers weren't paying much. Landlords weren't paying hardly anything. So the onus of security was on the bars at the time. And so it was all these guys that kind of competed with each other had to come to common ground and say, we've got a bigger battle. It's not that you're doing something that I can't compete with. It's the outside area that we need to solidify and normalize. And we all learned how to work together a lot better, though, because of it. And the CIDs, though, really solidified things because it brought us guaranteed money, revenue stream, but it also brought the landlords into the picture because the landlords basically make up the board of the CIDs. There's some retailers, some business owners on it too. But it went from the retailers running the neighborhood to landlords running the neighborhood. And there's a different philosophy.
Sure, yeah.
And that helped a lot.
Yeah, because it was chaotic with so many little voices and everybody kind of having their own turf. I remember that.
A lot of chiefs.
Challenge, yeah.
Too many chiefs.
Yeah. And, a lot of people don't think about things like the Power and Light District and the impact it has on the businesses that have contributed to the tax base for so long.
Yeah.
Everybody sees the bright, shiny thing and thinks, oh, this is great. But, I mean, that business comes from somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and the passing of riverboat gambling hurt our business. That was another, state/city sponsored economic driver that had a lot of fallout from it.
And people just never consider that the people who have everything at stake, have risked everything to build a restaurant or a bar, are nicked every time that happens, and sometimes it can be something that would actually put them out of business. I can remember when the beer company started having these big free Friday, sponsoring these big Friday concerts.
Crown Center.
And that time I was with Bob Reagan. We had the Buzzard, and I said, "This is one of my beer. I sell a lot of that beer."
I know.
I called those guys and said, "You got to quit doing this."
I know. We're here at 365.
Yeah,
Exactly,
I know.
Yes.
Now, for folks visiting Kansas City, maybe older folks, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, want to go in and experience Westport and walk around and see some of the shops and restaurants and bars, what would be your advice as far as what time and what part of the week would you come down here and kind of kick around?
Well,
What's the best time to see Westport?
I think any time, afternoons for the sidewalk shopping, the window shopping, Any weekday afternoons, weekend afternoons are good. As you mentioned earlier, there's tons of restaurants up here. There's a lot of great options. There's a Tivoli Theater also. I mean, my wife and I are regulars there.
Now that has several art house and other types of.
Yeah, it's a
features.
fine arts theater, and that's where you can see the shorts, and you can catch a matinee at 4 and have dinner in Westport, and
All those things that get an award in the Oscars that you never can find.
that's right.
Or at the Tivoli.
The Tivoli, yeah.
And I'm just
Your
talking
hour
about
in
when
the
it
time
gets
frame.
really kind of congested.
Right.
It's probably not the best time to come down, but that doesn't happen until much later in the evening.
Not till about
right?
11 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is I don't want people to think, oh, well, that's just too much trouble. It's really not at all. It's very convenient to come down here for dinner or an early evening.
If you're here before, I think 10 o'clock at night, there's lots of public parking. A lot of surface lots. There's the Manor Square Garage. There's always parking in Westport.
Have you had any late night calls? Kyle, you got to get down here. Blank's going on.
Okay, so I had a call from our alarm company in 2008.
Yeah.
And it was in the summer, and I got a call and said there's motion inside your building. And it was at about 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, a young customer had fallen asleep in the bathroom. So I show up, the alarm's going off inside, and it's horrendously loud, and he's behind the bar using our phone to try to call somebody. Well, that phone line is the one that's connects
Right.
with Jade, and you couldn't call out. So I turn off the alarm, and I say to the kid, "Did you pass out in the bathroom?" And he goes, "How'd you know?" And I said, "Because that's probably the only place the guys didn't look at closing time." So that was the nature of a late night call or
There you go.
early morning call. And when I
Okay.
pulled up here, I got out of my car so fast that I didn't put it in park. And John Lundquist he was Nigro's partner down at the Beaumont.
Oh, yeah.
Lundquist saw me pull up and get out of my car, and it was still rolling. And he goes, "Your car." I hop back in it, put it in park, and I go inside, and I see this young kid,
man.
well dressed. Well, he was working at it wasn't Barclay and Evergreen. It was another ad agency.
Bernstein Rain.
My daughter was going to do an internship there that summer, and so I find out who this kid is and where he's working. I said, "You owe my daughter lunch." He goes, "Oh, yes, sir. I'll be glad to."
Kyle, how have drinking habits changed recently of your customers? Is it the same?
High end. I
Is
mean,
that right?
in the 70s, Lloyd, we had 4 beers on tap.
Yeah.
Guinness, Michelob, Bud Light, and Bud. And then Miller Lite came in, and Coors Light, etc. And now we probably have 12 or 14 different beers on tap. Most of those being handcrafted. A Bud draft costs $4, and a handcrafted beer might cost $5.25 on up to $8.
Okay.
And kids pay for it.
Yeah, I remember in the 70s and 80s, it was a big deal. How much is a draft?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we fought like hell to keep the price down of the draft beers
Yeah.
because it was price sensitive. Now people are,
But they'll buy a cheap beer, but they'll turn around and buy a shot.
yeah,
They'll spend $6 on a shot, which is the cost of 3 draft beers.
So the whiskey sales are up quite a bit, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And
the
fine whiskeys.
Fine whiskeys are up. The handcrafted. The vodkas. I don't know how many different vodkas we carry now. All different flavors.
Do you sell much wine?
Not much, Dick.
Yeah.
No, we don't. No wine snobs allowed.
Yeah. Should be a sign on the door.
We always say we've got a lot of nice vodkas in case you're interested. The other maybe big change in Kansas City beer and liquor market is the number of vendors that there are now.
Oh yeah, sure.
We used to have 7 liquor companies call on us every Wednesday. They'd come in, and we'd go back in our liquor room and figure out our order, and write them a check and go on about business. And now there's really, 2 liquor companies get 80% of our liquor sales, and 2 beer companies get about 90% of our beer sales.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
And they consolidated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That happened in the
80s, probably.
80s, yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember the salesmen, they'd always be out wanting to promote some liquor, have Captain Morgan show up or something.
Yeah.
Does this still go on? Do they come out and send people out and have promotions for different launches and things?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they'll still do that. They want to create brand loyalty, and so they'll do discounts, or they'll buy the liquor from us, then give it to customers, and usually like a small serving, not necessarily a shot. It's usually a mixed drink, but then it's just a 2-ounce or 3-ounce serving. And they do some swag giveaway stuff.
Sure.
So we're up here enjoying a cigar. Does Kelly sell cigars?
Yeah.
What do you got?
Mainly we carry Fuente.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah, we get them from Fidel's. They're a great neighbor to have.
That's what we're doing right now.
Fuente
That's what you're
858.
smoking, Dick.
Gran Reserva.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Well, thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle. We've
What a lot of
enjoyed it.
great information on Westport and Kelly's and
Most of it's lies.
living life here. That's okay.
like to
We're
embellish.
pretty much about that too. Everybody we talk to is pretty much lying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kyle.
Well, next time you're in Westport, stop by Kelly's and raise a glass. You know you'll enjoy it. And we'll enjoy talking to you again when we find other interesting people living around us in Kansas City.
You might love it, you might hate it. It's my favorite freaking show.